Welcome to the Supper Talk podcast, where we have all those conversations you don't want to have with your family. I'm Steve, and this is my son, Chris.
And I screwed up the intro. We're still
Today,
new.
We're so new at this. Today, we're going to solve all the world's problems by tackling the new information about JFK, his assassination. But I think we're also going to talk a little bit more about Elon Musk, because Elon Musk is just sticking in my craw.
You
So
know, it's great. We have something that we have in common. And everyone for months was like, oh, there's going to be nothing that you have in common with this old guy that's on the other side of the aisle. It's like, no, we both hate Elon Musk so equally.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, and it's just one of those things that's so frustrating for me because again, I mean, I am not a Trump guy. Meaning, I'm not a supporter in any way of
You
Donald.
mean you don't have flags that have been changed to not be the American flag anymore that just say our king and savior?
Yeah, no, that's not me. I'm a long time independent voter. I voted in 11 presidential elections, 7 times for the candidate from one party and 4 times for a candidate from the other. So I'm my record. I mean, obviously, I lean, I guess, maybe towards one party, but really, it's not. It has nothing to do with the party. I think both parties are horrible. I think that neither party has the interests of the country as part of their agenda. But when it comes time to elect a president, you get a choice. Choice A is person.
Too sure turd sandwich.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's what it is in the past few elections. I mean, again, when it was Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, and Trump was unknown by anything except for his television appearances
and his stakes.
Yeah, I held my nose and voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton, which just, I mean, without a doubt, it was the most distasteful vote I have ever made in my life, because I just think she is a horrible person, self-serving, and has done a lot of damage to really great Americans. But at the time, I mean, I didn't know Trump except for what he was on TV. And I was like, man, this guy is a used car salesman, and he's going to be damaging to the country. But then he was president.
And nothing's changed.
But he was president for 4 years, and he really didn't do a very bad job. I mean, he did a pretty good job on a lot of things.
I think that if he would have been a lame duck president, he would have been a very forgetful he would have been inconsequential in history if he had been a lame duck. I think that him getting this second term and the context of how he gets the second term is going to be consequential for American history. And it's amazing how it went from being your presidency could have been an earmark in history, and now it's not.
Yeah, but when it was him and Joe Biden, I am a never Joe Biden guy. Joe Biden I think he's going to go down in history as the worst president that we've ever had, and that's saying a lot. I mean, I can't think of a single thing, not one single thing that he did right, either domestically or in terms of foreign policy. And in terms of his character, he just revealed the lack of character that he had. Joe Biden
I don't know if you remember the video that I had made on TikTok. It was right after he had made the announcement of forgiving all the student loans. And I called it out. I was like, okay, he's doing this right before an election. He's dangling this candy right in front of you young people, so that way you vote. Oh, they're talking about legalizing marijuana too? Hey, young people, look at the free candy. Go vote for the old guy with candy.
Yeah, and now the uh, the save plan, which is the income driven. It's the only thing that he had that happened that didn't get you know kicked out by a court was the Save Act, and now that's not even in effect anymore. All of that blah, 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 about saving money on student loans is has nothing. I mean, it's really accomplished nothing for anyone, and it's one of those things that like uh, again, I think that providing free education to the bachelor's level in the United States as part of public schooling would be a good idea. Um, but you would have to do that in a way that's not just forgiving student loans, particularly when you consider that some of those student loans go. It's like I'm getting a master's degree. Should just taxpayers in general pay for someone to get a master's degree? I don't think so. But I think that we would all benefit from the government paying for uh, undergraduate degrees and um, uh, a significant certification in terms of trade. So not just like a basic electrician certification. You should be able to pay, get paid not only for the certification from a VOTEC school or whatever, but also for an apprenticeship program that gets you so that you've got significant experience as an electrician or a steel worker or something like that.
Speaking of education, your spring break's over now. What's going on back in school?
Yeah, so I got my grades for last term. I was very happy with my grades. I got a 95 in Greek,
Nice.
and then I got a 98 in my evangelism class. So I got solid A's in both my classes.
So what is an evangelism class?
Yeah, and this is really interesting. I had a conversation with this about at my catechism class last night because um, again I'm going to a Protestant university theological seminary in the Baptist tradition. Um, so from a Baptist perspective, uh, if you can convince somebody to raise their hand and go down to the front of the aisle and say, "Yes, I believe in Jesus," that's all you need to do. From that point on,
You
you're
got your brownie points.
exactly right. So
Yeah.
you become a Christian at that point, and from a salvation standpoint, and again, this to a certain extent gets into what is heaven and what is hell, and what does it mean to be saved, and all those things. But and in the Catholic tradition, those questions are much more complex. They're a lot more complex. Um, so
Because
what
based
what
on that logic, I just introduced my friend Jimmy to Salty. And I don't know if you remember Salty, the Psalms from the late 80s. I just introduced him to Salty this last week. So technically I've evangelized to him, and he's finding a lot of joy in Salty and the context he provides nowadays.
yeah, there's so but from the Catholic perspective, what the Baptists consider salvation, the Catholics would consider the awakening of faith. Um, and and then once your faith is awakened, then you have a responsibility to live according to that faith. Um, and that would be uh, the Catholic view of evangelization would be um, awakening the faith in people so that they themselves can can work out their faith by living according to Christian principles.
So it's more of an inward expression as opposed to an outward action.
Yeah, there and it's so funny. There's
which is what it should be anyway.
Yeah, I'm going through what's called the OCIA, which is the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults. So that's how you become
handshakes.
Secret handshakes, total secret handshakes. This last Sunday I had my first exorcism, so I've been exorcised.
Is that when I get the notifications that Steve's completed an exercise?
Yeah, exactly. There's
just like a new app or icon that Apple adds to the fitness icons of just like, oh, there's an exorcism one. Yeah, hey, Steve completed an exercise.
Yeah, but these rites of Christian initiation began last September, at the beginning of September. So, and they won't be done until till Easter. At the Easter service, at the Easter Mass, is when I'll be confirmed into the Catholic Church. So that's 9 months. And that's 9 months of, meeting every week, going to Mass every Sunday. There's a retreat we do. So it's not an easy thing. And like for people that need baptized, like I don't need to be baptized because I was baptized as a Protestant. But if you've never been baptized before, it's there. The people that are in my cohort are still waiting to be baptized. And in the Baptist tradition, they're still baptized. Well, if you remember, when we were in Hawaii, we were in a different denomination. We were in the Foursquare denomination.
Yeah, and that was we went to the beach and we got dunked in the ocean, and we had a potluck afterwards.
Yeah, and like people would literally, they would bring their their aunties and their uncles or their nephews or whatever.
And it's a very informal experience, and come as you are, God accepts you. We're a celebration.
Yeah, and there are people that I remember specific instances where people would be like, they had never been Christians before. They would accept Christ at the baptism, and we would literally baptize them right then and there.
Yep.
And
it was a big event that was a more public event as opposed to keeping it inside the church, and it's something that our own community was celebrating. Because this is one of the interesting things about growing up the way that we did is every single time we moved, we went to a kind of different denomination, and we had a bunch of different flavorings of Christianity. And Foursquare was always the most interesting, especially with the context of Hawaiian culture surrounding it. But it was a celebration of faith, and it was a huge celebration in keeping the good news good. And I remember there would be hundreds of people that would go to North Shore, and there would be so many people on the beach for this big event with a huge potluck that just other beachgoers would be curious, and it would gravitate other people towards the event. And yeah, exactly like you're saying, people that weren't there for the baptism would wind up getting baptized because it'd been something that they'd been thinking of.
Yeah, and I give a tremendous amount of the credit for that culture to Wayne Cordero. I think
Wayne was an amazing man.
Yeah, and his whole doing church as a team methodology,
DCAT conferences.
Yeah, and it's so funny that because while he was in Hawaii, he was somewhat of a celebrity pastor, and
but he was a celebrity pastor in Hawaii before the internet had exploded and before social media. So people who knew him knew his story. They knew who he was. He was authentic, and like his heart was on his sleeve. And because of his personality and his story, he attracted a lot of people.
Yeah, and he was so genuine that once he built that this massive network of churches on the Hawaiian Islands, he left, and now he's back in Oregon, and he's running a small Bible college and a church there, and the church that he's running now is actually part of the Bible college. And what's funny is he does rodeo, and his event in the rodeo is it's kind of like barrel racing, except for you come in with a pistol and you shoot balloons that are attached to the barrels. So I mean,
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so it's and that's so in keeping with Wayne's character, that he just he's always been such a life loving and a fun loving person, that he's and I'm so happy for him that he's back in Oregon, because that's home for him, and he's enjoying life. So yeah, but I think you're absolutely right that that was a very interesting time, and for you and your brother, I'm assuming. I mean, those were so formative of years, because it's high school for you,
Well, and it was high school, but it was also us being really, really involved in music. And that was one of the things that, I joke around with a lot of people, because there's one band that I still actively listen to, even though I'm not a part of the church, and it's Five Iron Frenzy. And I love Five Iron Frenzy. I will sing every single album. I have memorized every album front to back. And they occasionally do shows in Denver, and Frontier Airlines just came back to Boise, so there might be a cheap way for me to get down to Denver, and we could potentially do like an in-person episode, which would be cool. And I would do that to go see a Five Iron Frenzy concert. Not because I wouldn't want to see you as well, but because of how much I love this band.
I would be the tertiary reason. Yeah.
But that was one of the big things of Hawaii, was how connected in New Hope we were. Because if I remember right, there was at the height of it, New Hope Oahu had like 7 daily services on Sunday, and each one had like 2,500 members in the main auditorium. And then there's an overflow building that had like 500 people. So you had 5 morning services and 2 evening services. And then Brad and I were involved in the Friday night high school ministry called Pure Heart. And Brad played guitar in the worship group, and I sang in the worship group. And Auntie Brenda and Uncle Steve were the parents that were volunteers for the group. And there were, 150 kids that would meet every Friday night. And we were involved in the youth leaders. So like, we were really, really involved in the church. And I remember when we wound up going to the service where we were commissioned to start New Hope Meridian, because we had helped with New Hope Mililani and Pastor Mike Palompo and getting that one all set up. And I can't remember what the team that you guys were a part of in New Hope Mililani, where you were the actual ones that did the breakdown and setup of the churches, but I was helping out with the Keiki ministry, and I was helping out basically watching Veggie Tales with 7-year-olds all Sunday in the first service. I'd have to go into the second service, and then I'd be doing stuff in the third service with Keiki services in New Hope Mililani. So like, we were really, really involved in the church, and we went to concerts at this place called the X Factory, and it was a great place to get introduced to local punk rock and local ska music. And that was the thing that really was formative for us moving to Idaho, because we immediately were able to connect with a punk rock community. And that was kind of what shaped us into the people that we turned into, was the music community specifically. And I think being so involved in music in church was what made us seek it out outside of church. And I will 100% attribute Napster to being relevant at this time in life, because peer-to-peer sharing was the most wonderful introduction to music for anyone, and now it's just Spotify.
Yeah, and it was so short lived because it was. I mean, it
because
was.
of
I mean,
Metallica.
but man, while it was up, you
Oh, it
could
was
you could
great.
just you could download anything. We had high speed internet, so
Well, and I
uh,
was talking to somebody about it the other day, and there's an artist that I absolutely love out of Kokomo, Indiana. His name's Joe Whiteford, and his current project is called Harley Poe. And like I've got Harley Poe records that I've bought from him. Anytime that he releases a record, I've had one opportunity to see Harley Poe live. But before Harley Poe, he was in a band on Tooth and Nail Records called Calibretto 13. And the only reason that I found out about Calibretto 13 was because Napster was a space that Joe Whiteford could record demos in his garage as a teenager and upload demos onto Napster to just get people to understand that his music was out there. So I got to hear all of this stuff that he had created that just doesn't exist anymore. And I wish that we still had the computer that has those files of these songs that he had of like Black Sheep. And there's this song about a Christian's perspective of Christian hate towards homosexuality in the 90s. And it's this really, really insightful song of, hey, Christians, you're not being very Christian. But it's been interesting because I've been able to watch his entire career kind of, there's been some mirroring with his walks with faith and my walks with faith. But I was introduced to him through Napster.
yeah. And there's I remember when you and your brother formed your own punk rock band called If Only.
Well, that was Brad's band in Hawaii. We did the band here in Idaho. Oh man, we have a really weird story about a guitar player. But yeah, Brad had If Only in Hawaii.
Oh, I thought because I remember you would play bass at the because we got a storage shed from the church from New Hope, and we would do practices there. And I thought I remembered you playing bass.
I did. Brad's friend Dave was their bass player, and I wanted to play bass. So when we moved to Idaho and we lived right down the street from Guitar Center, that was when you and Mom said, well, this is something that he's been wanting to do for a while. So you guys bought me my first bass guitar, since we had been to a new place. We didn't have any new friends and I was going to have a lot of time on my hands. So you bought me that acoustic bass. And then Brad and I started playing music together. And because he was teaching me how to play bass, he was teaching me some of the songs from If Only, and we would do like some covers of it. But then we formed a band with one of the kids from church and the brother of a kid that we went to shows with. And that kid is a absolute tragedy of a story. And I don't know if I've ever actually told you his story. Ethan, have I told you about him at all,
I don't
or
think
American
so.
Psycho?
I don't think
Okay.
so.
So this is a really, really interesting story. So we had just moved to Idaho, and for context, anytime somebody asks me if I've ever seen the movie American Psycho, I have really, really weird connotations with that movie because of this experience. So this is the experience. So we had just moved here. Brad and I had just started playing music, and we were going to this place called The Venue. And the Venue was the greatest concert house in Boise. It is amazing. I met my ex-wife there. I met a whole bunch of friends there. That place was my go-to probably 3 or 4 nights a week for years. So we had a friend, Mason, and we had already built like a 3-piece. So Brad was playing guitar, I was playing bass, and our buddy Matt was playing drums. But we wanted to have a rhythm guitar player as well. And Mason told us that his little brother Ethan was starting to play guitar and he could easily do rhythm. So at this point, it's a high school band, right? Like I think I'm 16 at this point. Brad probably had just turned 18. Matt's 15. And Ethan's the youngest of all of us. He's 13. Now, Ethan was kind of a weird kid, but nothing too weird. So we would have practices in the downstairs of the old split level house we had off of Creighton in Boise. And I think we played 2 shows total. One was like a backyard punk rock show. And the band was short-lived, maybe like 4 or 5 months. And then it just fizzled out. So we would see Mason all the time at the venue. And Mason was always talking to us about Ethan and how things were going with him. And Ethan started getting really weird. So Mason was explaining to us that Ethan would start wearing like 3-piece suits to high school. And he was becoming incredibly vain. And he was like obsessed with working out. And he was just becoming a different person. Like he was really egotistical. So come to find out, Ethan had undiagnosed schizophrenia. And he had just read the novel American Psycho. And there's a character in there that's portrayed by Christian Bale in a movie. And it's a really, really great movie. It's a crazy thriller that came out probably like 25, 30 years ago. In the story, though, Christian Bale is obsessed with being the absolute best of the best. And everything down to the details of his business cards has to be better than other people. And at one point in the movie, he bludgeons somebody else to death because they have a better apartment than he does. So that way they don't have a better apartment anymore.
Nice coffin, though.
Yeah, great coffin. So he covers up the death by just going over to the guy's apartment, pretending to have his voice and leaving a voicemail message. So come to find out, Ethan, with this undiagnosed condition, has done the exact same thing to his mother. And one night, all the free weights that she purchased him, he bludgeoned his mother to death in her sleep. And then left a voicemail message saying, "Hey, Mom and I are out of town. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Leave a message." And then he just walked over to his dad's house. Didn't say anything for a couple of days. So this kid was in our house. And that's, anytime anyone asks me about American Psycho, I'm like, yeah, I've seen that movie. Yeah, I've definitely seen that movie. There's a real tragedy of a story because his mother was a special education teacher in the Boise School District. She was really, really well renowned. And this whole thing happened when Ethan was 17 and a half. So just a couple of years after the band had, broken up. And he was tried as an adult, as a minor. And a couple of years ago, I don't know why I'd gotten interested in this, but the court had was re-looking at the case because his lawyer was trying to appeal it, saying that he should have been tried as a minor and not as an adult. But because of the severity of the case, he was tried as an adult. So the court documents were unsealed and it was able to be re-looked at. And in the state of Idaho, we have the Idaho State Repository, and that allows you to look up any information on any person if you have a little bit of information about them. And I was able to look up all of the unsealed documents of what they found. I'm like, I was in a band with this guy. Oh my God, I could never imagine.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy what people will do.
And it's sad when when there's mental health problems that are very legitimate problems that go undiagnosed.
Yeah, schizophrenia and the related types of disorders are serious. We had I think it was not last winter, but the winter before, I think it was. We had a very young woman was homeless here in town, and she had a baby in the middle of the winter, was living in a tent, in the winter, and she was, hearing all these voices, and she strangled her baby to death in the middle of the winter in a tent. And I mean, there is nothing about that story that is not heart-wrenchingly horrible. You
Yeah.
know, there's
How
yeah,
wrong are you to fight that hard against the instinct to protect your child?
yeah, and also, I mean, it's like, how do you allow, particularly, and this crips in my craw, just, because of the, um, a lot of inconsistency in, in pro-life groups. Um, I mean, how you have a young mother who doesn't have a place to raise their child. That's just, and I mean, how you can say that
Passion
as,
until they're breathing, but once they're breathing, it's on your own.
yeah, I'm like, I'm the person that I'm like, we don't need, um, you know, 8 weeks of paid family leave. We need 3 years of paid family leave if you actually want children to be able to firmly attach to their mother as a stable and loving figure in their life. That's just how long it takes. There maybe we should do an episode someday about the fabric of society.
Oh, and how this is where I become the old person. I'm like, oh, we're all relying on the government to be self-sufficient, and now we're no longer relying on our family, and our family units are fucking broken all the time. Point and case, the last 10 years of us.
Yeah, but if you look at I mean, you just earlier you were talking about our involvement at the church, and if you remember before that, when we were in Alaska, uh, there's we were involved in like literally every sport that you guys were playing, and part of that is just making sure that come hell or high water, we were going to be involved in your life in some significant way as you grew older. And the other piece of it is modeling what it means to be part of society. That you can't just say, oh, well, society ought to do this, that, and the other thing, but you're not part of it,
Well,
So
and that's one of the other things that I don't think a lot of people actually realize is you need to be willing to have a certain selflessness, and you need to be willing to have a certain aspect where you can put others above yourself, because it's that whole adage of, eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And I, as somebody who's really distrustful of people, I get that. I would much rather be combative with people and not make friends. But that was also one of the things that when we moved into the house from the apartment, I hated my neighbors at the apartment. I could not stand them. We were in too close a proximity with one another. And when we moved into the suburbs, which is still a weird thing for me to say, I knew that the neighborhood was a very old neighborhood. Like the people across the street are the husband's in his 80s. My next door neighbor is in his late 60s and lives with his mother. The neighbor next door on the other side is an older woman who's in her late 60s. So like my neighbors are not people that I can rely on potentially, but I'm somebody that they can rely on. And that's something that is hard for me to convey when the car that's parked in the driveway says Satan on it. So I want to make sure that, hey, I want to be a part of the community, and I really do need to. So like in the wintertime, just going over and shoveling all their driveways and not doing it really prompted. And last night we were coming home, and Coletta next door, her garage door is open, and it's just the light is flashing on and off, and it looks like somebody's broken in. And it's like 9 o'clock, but I ring the doorbell, and she comes by concerned. I was like, Coletta, are you okay? Like, I don't know if somebody broke into your house or not. And she just had this look of like, oh my gosh, somebody's actually looking out for me. And it's just knowing, hey, I'm here for you if you need me. And you have to be willing to put little moments of selflessness out there and really care about somebody. And I don't think that if you're unable to spend time with your parents who are unable to provide a model, like how else are you going to get that model unless you can get into some kind of community that shows that? This is one of the arguments that I make for religion is I completely can get behind some of the morality. I can't get behind necessarily the mythology, but I do believe in the community. And if you can find a bunch of people that all are aligned on something, having a community is a priceless thing.
Yeah. There's and I think we talked about this a little bit last time. It's if you see your life as only about you, I mean, if I'm here just to make myself feel good and for me to be successful, then I think you miss out on a lot of the purpose of life. I mean, there's we're not again, from my perspective, but I don't think it's exclusively a Christian idea. I mean, we're here for a reason. I mean, there's a method to the materialness of the world, and part of that method is thinking outside of yourself and working to accomplish things for other people.
So on that, let's talk about the government lying to people.
My goodness gracious.
King of segues.
Yeah. You talk about JFK, right?
What? I mean, yeah, if that's what you want to talk about, I just figured we'd, have a normal conversation about the government being corrupt and dishonest people.
Well, I got to admit, I give credit to both President Trump and DNI Gabbard, because like the last time that Trump kind of said he was going to release all that information and he didn't. The reason he didn't is because Mike Pompeo came to him and said, you can't release this information. And he listened to Mike Pompeo. There's, Tulsi Gabbard, Director Gabbard, there's, number one, I have a huge amount of respect for Tulsi Gabbard. I think she's a wonderful person. I would love to see her as the first woman president. But both Donald Trump, who had two significant assassination attempts on his life, one that was like literally just like a quarter of an inch from pink mist in his noggin on national TV. That would have been a tragedy. That would have just been a a horrible, horrible event. If it weren't for just a quick turn of a head and a
Barely dodging in the right time.
man, yeah, and there's they've been showing it the past few days because JFK's been in the news, but the grainy video.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch that on repeat.
Yeah, but
But if you've seen it, it's a horrifying video.
That's exactly right. And you can just imagine what his wife was thinking, and
being in the seat right there with him. Yeah. It must have been one of the most horrifying experiences.
Yeah, and it was before I was born, so I didn't experience the what kind of a shock that must have been for the nation. I know it was a major event in the life for both your grandma Pat and your grandpa Dick.
Well, and I would also imagine that, in contrast to today, that would have been so much more impactful, because today you are overwhelmed with thousands and thousands of options of how to get your media. But back then, it was like, what, 3? And most people were glued to the news every single night because that was how they were getting their information. And if that was the news that came in, oh my God, you don't get to have any other alternatives. That's just the thing that's on repeat. And I could imagine that it would be more of the sensation that we felt during 9/11 when the media is replaying the same thing over and over again, and the nation is just kind of in this stunned, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. So it was certainly a kind of like 9/11 style life event for my parents, for your grandparents. But the scope and scale of what happened on September 11th, 2001 was just so unbelievably horrific.
Absolutely. And I'm not trying to compare, thousands of life to an individual president by any stretch of it. But the more of the sentiment that I'm imagining is how much that caught the entire country off guard.
Yeah, I remember on Easter weekend of 2002, I had been hired by the TSA, the guys who now do all the security in the airports. I've been hired by them to help federalize the security forces. So I was in Oklahoma City because the FAA had a security field office there in Oklahoma City, and that's where we were trying to figure out what we were going to do in terms of securing the nation's airports. So we got a weekend off for Easter, and the day before Easter, I went to the this is the way I enjoy my life, I guess. The day before Easter, I went to the memorial, the Oklahoma City Memorial, at the site of the...
Yeah, you've told me this story, and you saw the memorial of the bombing.
Yeah. So I went there, and it's a very, very great memorial, very impactful, particularly. But so I'm processing 9/11, and now I'm at this place remembering a domestic terrorist who killed hundreds of people, in the same fashion that these international terrorists killed thousands of people.
Having just gotten off of serving your country in the military for 20 years, you are the perfect citizen for a movie.
Yeah. but I remember there's a field at that memorial that was the playground for the preschool. So they had on-site childcare for all the federal workers at that building. And I want to say there was, I might be off on my numbers, but I think there were 29 kids inside the nursery, 27 of whom died in the bombing, and the other two were horrifically scarred for the rest of their life. And I remember sitting there because I had been going around the memorial, and I knew where Timothy McVeigh had parked his van, and I knew the pathway that he took away. And I'm like, that rat bastard walked right past this playground and looked at all those children that were on the playground just having a great day. And he knew that the bomb that he had just literally
was
lit
still
the fuse
making
on,
the decision.
and he just there. I mean, he could have turned around, and even though the fuse had lit, he could have tried to put it out. He could have, driven it to the other side of the building to spare the children or whatever. But I just remember that, if becoming a Christian is a conversion of love, that moment was a conversion of hate for me. I was just like, that level of evil, and that's so, so that's what we end up talking about. We talk about, September 11th was just this level of evil. And then when you look at if you, just expand your conspiracy theories out for a little bit, there was a period of time in the United States where the president of the United States was assassinated. The president's brother, who was a candidate for president of the United States, was assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr., the leader of the greatest civil rights movement in the history of the United States, was assassinated. And Malcolm X, who was the counter-revolutionary leader of the civil rights movement, were all assassinated. And they were all assassinated at the exact same time. And it's hard for people in my generation to look at those events and not see them as connected. And they're
Well, I think that a lot of people like to create narratives that can explain connections that they can't explain. Like this is one of the funniest things about doing this podcast with you. I'm listening to way more news, and I'm listening to way more news from varying different sources, and I'm seeing more dots. So it's really easy for me to connect these dots. And this is like the whole conspiracy theory that I had last week. And, I know that is not going to happen. But I have more dots, and it's fun to play this game, and it's fun to be like, oh, this makes more sense for me. And it's really lame to just acknowledge, no, he's just doing things I don't like. That's a really simple, easy explanation, and it actually, is logical and it's sound. He's just doing things that I don't like that he's allowed to do. Period.
Yeah, and
it's more boring. It's boring, and there needs to be some kind of spice to make things more interesting. People want to think that the government was it's an inside job at 9/11 and steel doesn't burn at that temperature. Like, no, there's people that absolutely hated the concept of America, and they flew planes into a building. That's a very simple thing that you can accept. And it can be very easy to prove by how blindsided the president was by that.
Yeah. And the exact same people tried in 93 to knock down the exact same building.
Yeah, but no. The government did it. The government. Give me more reasons to distrust something that I already distrust. And that was the interesting thing about the JFK files being released that I've been talking about it for the last month is, okay, I think one of three things is going to happen. I think he is going to release 80,000 pages of black text, and it's just going to be 80,000 pages of redactions, which would be kind of funny. That's then he'd be like, I did it. Or he's going to do something and it's going to reveal new information, and the conspiracy theorists are still not going to accept it. And the conspiracy theorists are going to be like, well, but there's this. You know, today he only released 63,540 pages and there's not 88,000. So very clearly there's 16,440 pages more that have the information that we need to connect the rest of these dots. So those people are going to exist. Or we're just going to get more context to the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald shot the president, and it's going to be kind of boring, but we'll just have more context. And that's kind of what it seems here. But of all those three options, do any of those situations give me any more reason to doubt the government than what I already do? And I think that's where the conspiracies just kind of fail, is like, what are you trying to prove? I already don't like the government.
Yeah, there's the one good thing about this release is I got a message from my AI when it had completed reading the 63,000 for however many pages. So it's like, hey, I read it. What do you want to know? So I mean, you used to have to like divide it up and say, you read these pages, and it would take a long time to figure out just what that stuff said. But because they were all digitized, the AI just started reading. And
how long did it take to go through everything?
Must have been just like maybe eight hours. I mean, just
that's insane.
Yeah, just and so I just sent a message to it that I said, okay, well, what new insights did this give that we didn't already have? And so, some of the things that were released just kind of like confirm things that I generally think about conspiracy theories and protection of information. If you can explain something with just sheer incompetence on the part of, some government officials, that is a way easier case to make than all these people have been like collaborating and secretly trying to murder the president of the United States, and nobody and as long as this has been, has like, look, I know exactly what's going on, and there's been no whistleblowers, there's been no, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. I think it showed that. It demonstrated that, yeah, there were CIA.
It demonstrated the FBI and CIA knew about him a lot longer than what was talked about, but it didn't make it out to be that they were the ones who initiated it.
Yeah, to use your analogy of connecting the dots, they didn't connect the dots.
Yes.
They were like, okay, here's this guy, but he's just kind of a lunatic, but he's not dangerous. And he clearly was dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
The thing that I thought was the most hilarious formerly redacted thing is the government didn't want to have Russia's slight on Lee Harvey Oswald because they said that he was a lousy shot. And I personally think that that's kind of insightful of, well, I mean, if the argument is that the Soviets hired him and it took 3 shots, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, he's kind of a lousy shot. Or if they're just digging on the fact that their military is better than what Lee Harvey Oswald is, yeah, we could have done it in 1 shot, but he was a lousy shot. I just think that one little tiny phrase being redacted gives kind of a context to how the Cold War shaped a lot of the narrative of how they didn't want certain messaging coming out from one nation over another. But in the context of today, it seems so benign.
Yeah, but that kind of goes to the other piece that I think is kind of revealed in these documents, and that's that you know, a lot of the reasons for secrecy. Certainly, there was, you know, an embarrassment and incompetency on the part of those two agencies, in particular, CIA and FBI.
Oh, oh, there we go. There you
Yeah, it
are.
says that there's
You,
I don't know
you
I don't know
went out
what
and then you're
happened there.
back
Okay,
in. It's fine.
the
It's still
man,
recording and
I
it's
was like,
still,
oh,
it's
oh
just
no,
going to
everything's
be added in
gone.
on the end. I'll
The
get it edited. This is why we pay for good software.
But
This is why we trust
so
AI, because it's working for us.
That little detail about you know, what the Soviet spy said. Well, someone heard that information and gave that information to the CIA. So you have to think about what it is that we ask our intelligence professionals to do, in terms of the risk to their own life and the lives of the people that they love.
Oh, so if someone had told the spy that they were a lousy shot, and if that hadn't been redacted, that could have put the life of that spy at risk,
Yeah, and there's another
that
little
would have
piece of
revealed,
information that they
okay, which
released
one of
that
you told him that he was a lousy shot?
that gave information about how they bugged a phone.
Okay.
And gave very specific details on how they used some chemicals that they told you how to make to mark the bottom of the phone so that another agent could come by and check the phone with an IR light to verify that that phone had been bugged. So there's and all that is sources and methods. How we go about collecting that information, and it's not just protecting that particular agent, but it's giving confidence to the agents that we are now recruiting that that we will protect you. We will not disclose information that will put you at risk. That's exactly right. So
endanger you.
DNI Gabbard
has,
okay, you know, has a you know, she made a choice to release that information, and my assumption is that, you know, it's just been so long that it really doesn't you know, have any practical matter. But the other side of that, and this is just me in general, you know, there's this kind of a desire for transparency on the part of the government. We want the government to tell us everything that they know about everything that they know. And I am not in that camp at all. Not at all. Because that.
No, we don't need to. We don't need to know. And honestly, what happens in the public domain, our adversaries get to know. So if things go into the public domain, everybody gets access to that, and we don't want everyone to have access to it. And that's, do I think that it's shisty as a human thing? Yeah, but government's not human. Government's not people. Government's a different thing altogether, and it has to function in a way to protect people.
There's particularly, you know, CIA case officers who, I mean, when you hire that person, you're hiring them to to be a criminal. They're going to, I mean, if you are in a foreign country and you are trying to gather intelligence about that foreign country for your country, you are a criminal. And if you get caught, that other country can throw you in prison and throw away the key. You have.
Yeah, any number of things, especially depending on what country you're doing it in.
Depends on having access to those kinds of information that are gathered by CIA case officers all over the world, countries friend and foe. We are a spying nation, but we're not alone. France spies on us. Britain spies on us. Israel is probably like the most prolific.
We need to make sure that this Gaza Mar-a-Lago idea is actually a really good idea.
Yeah,
we should double check our big brother's got some good things on their mind.
And the people that we're recruiting to do that work are not stupid people. They know exactly what they're doing. They know what the risks are. Yeah, that's a legitimate thing. There's so it's like, hey, I mean, we'll just there's I mean.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this, but what's the alternative? Them having it instead? All right, man.
Yeah, and
you live with that
just,
decision.
Let's
we'll
speculate a little bit
and
about
that's a very real
Diddy
mentality.
And So Diddy would
did he do it?
Is not a particularly bright person. He probably wouldn't be a good operative, but boy, does he know a lot of people. And so that's so you would want to have access to a person like Diddy or a person like Epstein, not for what they can do, but for the access that they can give you to a whole bunch of people.
The information that they can provide.
If you are an operative, and you have the ability to get access to a bunch of really valuable people through this one person, but that one person is a despicable child molester. And the only way that you're going to get what you need from them is to look the other way when they are molesting children. That is an ethical dilemma that is of just a really, really large scale. And yeah. And they're not always that way. I mean, it might be, it's like, hey, this guy's, he likes to gamble. So we're gonna fund his gambling efforts in Vegas. That's exactly right. And
we might liquor him up a little bit to get him to gamble a little bit more one night. Put him into a situation where we can leverage
like prostitutes. So
the powers.
We'll buy their prostitutes. So there's always going to be. And I mean, if I could get good information from somebody by paying for their prostitutes, I would absolutely pay. I would sign that affidavit. Yeah.
Speaking as the government, not as Steve, the Catholic.
But there's again, it's one of those things. It's like if you're working for your government and you believe, like I do, that that's exactly right. Yeah, we've done some horrible things.
Your government is doing the larger
the bombing
good.
in Dresden, the firebombing at Tokyo. There's just all kinds of things that we've done that should not have been done, but were. but if you just look at the impact that two things: one, Christianity, and two, the United States has had on the world. So, like, yeah, every place that has free
Very
societies,
impactful.
generally equal rights for men and women, um, uh, you know, uh, laws that prevent exploitation of children. If you look at in the Western world that was influenced seriously by Christianity, and then compare that to the myriad of nations that continue to be impacted by Islam, or there's there it's night and day. It is very, very night and day in terms of the quality of life for a person living in Denmark or Britain or Ireland or Spain, and compare them to a person that's living in Afghanistan or Pakistan. So that's, and then much to my dismay, uh, after World War II, we did the unspeakable. We invested in our enemies. And Germany is the strongest economy in the EU, and Japan is the strongest economy in the Asia Pacific. And the reason that those two nations are so powerful economically is because the United States invested in them after defeating them in war. When normally what you do is you just seize all their. That's exactly right. So
Collect your spoils and move on.
And this is for me, this is traditionalism. This is why I'm a traditionalist. It's because I genuinely believe that are there still problems with the United States? Are we still doing things wrong? Yes, but 100 years from now, the world will be better if the United States remains the dominant power in the world.
So let's speculate on something for a second. Let's say 80 years ago, the nation of Germany dissolved. What would have happened differently? What do you think would have happened in the society that would have existed? Because we obviously wouldn't so let's say Germany and Japan dissolve. The nation island of Japan is now just absorbed into China. And Germany, I guess, would become part of the USSR at that point because of the influence of Soviet Russia being able to actually go from the Eastern Front into the Western side of Germany.
Yeah, there's
NATO probably wouldn't have existed, obviously.
Well, the question of NATO is an whether or not that would have happened. But what I think would happen in that circumstance is the losers in that war, the people who just lost their country doesn't exist anymore, would have gone underground, and we, in both of those cases, we would be dealing with the insurgent violence of oppressed people, because that's what you do. You just, the only way to make a nation no longer exist is to protect. Yeah, and
stamp out the oppressors, or the oppression, or the resistors.
And you can
basically do what Israel is doing.
Imagine
in
the
Gaza
same
right
thing. If you look at what the United States did after we were victorious in our own Civil War. So when the United States defeated the Confederate States of America, there's it didn't end up working this way, but Lincoln's plan for reunification was called the 10% plan. So only.
Well, and this is what you were talking about last week. You said that his original thought was that slaves were going to originally want to go back to Africa, which is oddly hilarious that Trump is saying that, hey, if you're here illegally, you could self-deport as well.
Yeah,
and
because
and anybody thinks that
in the
that's
case
actually
of,
going to happen.
The formerly enslaved folks, they had they had been here for generations, and that they didn't want to go to some land that they had never seen before, that they knew. Yeah. So they
that would have potentially enslaved them an additional time.
But the other piece of it is, just look at what we have now in terms of people within the South who still think of it as the War of Northern Aggression, and still think negatively of them damn Yankees, and the reason that there's that disdain amongst the people in the South is because we occupied the South and tried to oppress them for the immediate years following the Civil War. So it wasn't until I think it was the 1867 Compromise. I might be a little bit early on my dates. When the South was like, hey, we'll give you the presidency in this contested election if you get rid of the federal troops. You have to think about what it meant to live in Alabama under the oppression of an occupying army from the North. That had an impact on that society that lingers still to this day in a distaste for the people of the North amongst the South.
Well, that's why there's so many stereotypes to the sentiment of this is my land, it was my daddy's land, it was my granddaddy's land. It's like, yeah, they've been there for generations, and there were people that were on their land for a very long time.
And we occupied Germany, but we occupied Germany with boatloads of cash, and the catalyst for the creation of the Warsaw Pact was when we were like, oh, okay, we're gonna include Germany in our defensive alliance, and Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, was like, you're gonna do what? Because if you think about what we did after World War II, it was unparalleled in all of human history to conquer an enemy after years of bloody and brutal and horrible warfare, and then to be like, okay, we're going to do what we don't want to do. What we want to do right now is we want to get the spoils of war. We want to punish them for what they've done. We want to make them, just taste defeat as much as we possibly can. We want them to just feel the full force of our might, right? That's what we want to do. But we didn't do that. And
Couldn't the argument be made that the reason that we wouldn't want to do the full force of our might is because at some point in history, we do need to be able to make a change towards trying to work together as nations? And I think that, Germany was in kind of a unique position because they'd already been decimated with World War One. And the whole reason that Hitler came back into power with World War II was how the Paris Accords had decimated Germany after World War One. So the defeat in World War II was already this embarrassment on top of defeat. So couldn't it be argued that, okay, you have been decimated. We could take you even further, but we're going to show you compassion because we want the world to move in a different direction. So is that
it's
the
absolutely
reason that
that's the
those
whole idea behind
decisions were made?
The Marshall Plan, and it was tremendously successful up until we won the Cold War. And when we won the Cold War and did not dissolve NATO, that's when everything flipped. And the reason that there is war in Europe now, nobody wants to acknowledge this, but the reason there's war in Europe now is because we continue to expand our supposed defensive alliance towards the borders of an ever weakening Russia. And at what point did we think that Russia was just going to capitulate? I mean, if we look at the siege of Leningrad and the level of sacrifice and pain that they went through in order to save that city, and on what planet would we think that they would just, oh yeah, that's fine, you can just put nukes on our border and we're not gonna and no
Right.
World War II is easy to predict now that it's in the past, but the Blitzkrieg was this lightning fast for the day military operation that just took everybody by surprise. We're like, whoa, we thought we had them contained. We thought we had done all this stuff, and we were surprised. There's again, Japan. There's Japan and their war with China. How we thought that empire was just going to allow us to continue building our naval capacity in the Pacific, attacking at us. It just didn't make any sense. So what we did is we took those enemies and turned them into allies, all the way up until the end of the Cold War for Europe. And now what we've got is, I mean, we're literally, wanting to arm Germany again, and we're advocating Germany putting their soldiers on the ground inside Ukraine as peacekeepers against the Russians. And you have to just put your head inside a bag and not look at any of the history of the 20th century. Yeah, like
the amount of irony in it.
Do you think that the Russians are going to allow the Germans to have a military power over their soldiers in any way, shape, or form in a peaceful way? No, that's just not even. So, and then it's like, oh,
it's so funny because the level of matter of fact that it is for you is missed by so many people in my generation and younger, because this is the kind of stuff that you don't get demonstrated until you've like really, really looked into, again, all of the dots. But it's so easy to get lost in all the dots that you don't actually find the truth. You just find like, okay, how did this come through? And I'm just going to come up with an explanation. And this is just easier and to come to a conclusion than actually looking at all of the truths that are behind what might be right in front of you. And the idea of Russian narratives being based off of Russia's relationships with Germany make a whole lot more sense than Russian narratives based on the relationship that Russia has with the United States. We won the Cold War,
and we're using those two victories as an excuse for starting another war in Europe. It's crazy. Yeah, there's
Well, I'll since I'm king of segues, let's just get into some table topics.
Yeah,
let's have some family dinner.
Yeah,
let's lighten things up a little bit since we're talking about
with the
war. No, your haunches are up? I can't tell whatsoever.
That's
Howler, no, we're not going to ask a question about World War II. No. All right. Okay, so if you could only go on 3 websites for the next month, which would you choose?
The first one's easy, Perplexity.
3 websites for the next month.
I have become wholly dependent upon AI. So, and then the second would be the website of my university, because my education is online, so I would not want to not go to school. And so now I really only get one website for myself. And I would have to say Instagram. And Instagram is because there are so many people that I love that are on Instagram, and I kind of use it to keep track of them. And the other thing is, good night. It is so hilarious. I can sit and watch, cat videos, and like I follow a channel on Instagram that just tells Norm Macdonald jokes. And
oh my God, I have that show up on my Reddit, and I love Norm Macdonald.
Comedians, and it's exactly right.
And his jokes were it was all in the delivery.
I often say
hear such and such died? I didn't even know he was sick.
Jesus's parables are like Norm Macdonald's jokes, because Jesus was this master of rhetoric, and he would include all these details in the story, but the story has one point, and a lot of the details of the story have nothing to really. All he's doing is he's just telling you a story so that he can get to that point. And that, but
if you're
that's
using
the way
that
that Norm
analogy,
Macdonald does it. Because I mean, he tells a story, and you're like, what on earth is he talking about?
Yeah.
And then there's like one thing that he told you at one point during that whole diatribe, and he connects it with a punchline, and it's just so hilarious. So my third would, I would go with Perplexity, my university site, and Instagram.
So I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day, about how I'm incredibly low tech with my job, and that's the thing that I love is I'm actually not on the internet most days, other than social media, and I'd be okay with giving up social media for a month. Really, I've gone in between of just like, am I gonna post anything? I'll just not post anything, and it's the ebb and flow of not having social media is more helpful than not. But I would probably say that the first one that I'm gonna do is ChatGPT, just because that's what I'm using. And especially with the project that I've been working on with writing, like I'm having so much fun collaborating. And the next thing that I would do, I mean, if it's the same month and you're not on Riverside, I'm not going to be able to be on Riverside. So we're going to take a month off of podcasting then. I would probably say I need Instagram because that is how I manage my business. That's how I do most of the communication with people that I don't want to have them have my phone number. And then Squarespace. Yeah, and that's also just because of my business. If I could only choose three, ChatGPT is where I'm having fun, Instagram is where I have connections, and Squarespace is where I'm having the business of my business. But yeah, I think that the AI stuff is surprisingly becoming more important. And I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, Josh, and he wants me to actually make a documentary of this process that I'm doing. Because I was telling him everything that I've been doing with this book that I'm trying to create. And he's like, I had no idea that you could collaborate with AI in that way. I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to think of different ways of getting it to tell the story because I have no idea how to write a book. So I just am asking it, okay, what would you do? And okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let's start with part one. What do you need me to do to make all of this stuff come to fruition? And going through this process and like having an idea in my head for the last 15 years, like I know the broad strokes, but now I'm collaborating and it's getting fine details to come out. And I was explaining the broad overview of the story to somebody yesterday, and I was trying to explain that it's an office romance, but it's an office romance tragedy. And then I had this epiphany last night that I realized I'm not actually writing an office romance. I'm writing a story about depression. And that's the reason that I had never wanted to write it when I was at the end of my marriage is I didn't realize how much my subconscious I didn't want to acknowledge. And that's what a lot of that story was actually about, was two people that were very depressed meeting. And now, because I need to do a lot of research, the thing that I've been collaborating with is the most brilliant researcher ever. And I'm like, I had an epiphany last night. This is the direction that we need to start moving in with the book. Like, this is the story that we need to tell. This is a much more compelling, this is a much more important story. I think this is a much more human story. How do we make this happen? So this entire morning, like I spent probably an hour and a half helping train it on the sentiment, the DSM-5, all of the different aspects of mental health disorders that I want to showcase in the book. And I'm going to try and have it be a horribly tragic mental health office romance, which is probably going to appeal to like 4 people. And that's okay because the project itself is just fun. And it's creating each chapter, like I've never read that chapter before. So it's new to me and it's exciting. And then I'm also like, that sucks, change it. That sucks, change it. And I don't feel like I'm hurting anyone's feelings. So it's letting me play. And I think that feeling of play is what people really need to find. And like, that was the thing that I was telling you about with taking pictures with the Polaroid. And earlier today, I was trying to take pictures of Tesla. And I got this really good one of her in the lighting of just the light coming out. And I'm finally understanding how that camera works. And this is the play thing that I always want to talk about, is just you got to play with things to figure out how it works. And then once you figure out how it works, how does it work
Yeah,
in a way that gets that
for me,
spark of excitement, so that way you want to keep playing with it.
The AI is very similar, except for it's in my research. So it is literally like having a graduate level research assistant right next to me, telling me, where I need to go to find information. And so I'm not wasting my time reading, the entire book when there's only one chapter of the book that pertains to what I'm writing. So,
speaking of looking at a finite amount of things when there's a lot of things to look at, has Elon Musk pissed you off this week?
Yeah, I honestly, again, I'm not a Trump fan, but in the choice that we had to make in this last decision or election between Biden and Trump, to me, that's not a difficult decision to make. And I generally think that Trump did a pretty good job, and I generally support his desire to reform the government, and I think that I'm generally supportive of the things that he said that he wants to do. What I do not understand in any way, shape, or form is why on earth he is allowing Elon Musk to do the kinds of things that he's doing. And
so explain the thing we were talking about earlier with the legal trouble that Musk is in this week, and whether or not he actually needs to be a part of the administration.
In the Constitution, it's not even an amendment. It's in the Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution. It's the Appointments Clause. And whenever there's a confirmation hearing in the Senate, we hear, the Senate has to give its advice and consent. Well, why does the Senate have to give its advice and consent for some people, but not for other people, right? So the Senate doesn't have to confirm everybody in the entire federal government, but there are some people that they do, and it's principal officers. So there's really two kinds of people when it comes to confirmation. You're either a principal officer or you're what do they call it? An inferior officer. Isn't that a great term? An inferior officer.
And I guarantee that you could never call Elon inferior in any stretch of the imagination.
The president's allowed to have advisors, and those advisors don't need to be confirmed by the Senate. And the reason that those advisors don't have to be confirmed by the Senate is because they're not doing any significant work on behalf of the government. But a cabinet secretary, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Defense, these are people who are going to do considerable work. But it's not just cabinet secretaries. So the Secretary of the Army, right? So the Defense Secretary is a member of the cabinet, but the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, they work for the Secretary of Defense, but because they do such significant work on behalf of the government, they are required to be nominated and confirmed by the Senate. So, if you look at Trump's last term, his daughter was an advisor, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. He was an advisor. Now, were they doing things behind the scenes, and were they pulling political levers and so on and so forth? Yes, they were. Were they hiring and firing thousands of federal workers? No.
And the things that they were doing would
even
be
if it was
considered
significant, because Kushner was a
at
very
scale.
yes, yeah. So there's but they're
both very influential.
They didn't do any, actual like management work. They didn't submit a budget. They didn't.
There was no administrative
manage
duties
a budget
that they performed.
They didn't, other than the people in their own, their own staff, in their own little office. They didn't supervise any federal employees. They didn't have any of those kinds of things. Musk, on the other hand, is having more influence on the operation of the federal government than any of the cabinet secretaries. He's not just been present as an advisor in cabinet meetings. He's been given the reins of cabinet meetings and giving directions in those cabinet meetings to cabinet officers. He's not just looking at budgets and giving advice to the president about the budgets. He's cutting programs out of the budget, cutting entire agencies out of the government. And the guy he wasn't nominated. He hasn't been confirmed by the Senate. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that we're going to eat having to rehire all those people he's fired. We're going to eat having to reestablish those agencies, and potentially agencies that probably should be on the chopping block. USAID is one of them.
And then there's the backlash of the egg on our
thing that I'm
in the international
very,
community.
very worried about is when we were talking about CIA case officers, well, who is going to want to work for the federal government in the future? And the only way that I think that we can salvage the desirability of the federal government as an employee is for the courts, unfortunately, for the courts to call bullshit on Doge. And it's
okay. So could Doge be made legitimate if Trump had made an executive action making it an 18-month temporary secretary position, and he had been confirmed into that, so that way it wouldn't exist in perpetuity, but it could exist as a cabinet position that has that authority? Would the executive branch have that
so the
kind of
president
authority
could have
to create a
proposed
cabinet position of that type?
And he could have nominated Musk to be the leader of it, but he didn't do that. And in fact, what he's done is he instead of just having Musk as an advisor, he took this digital information service, this little known entity of the government that was created by Barack Obama, and renamed it Doge, which, again, Doge is a frickin' meme on Twitter. It's a joke. And Musk is like, ooh, I'm going to name it Doge the same way he named his kid frickin' X. There's
He's just really inspired by Prince. And he wants
Musk
to name things unpronounceable
child.
symbols.
And he is probably the most intelligent child on the planet when it comes to into coming up with big ideas. I mean, really big ideas, really, really big ideas. And then figuring out a way to build manufacturing processes around those big ideas that'll bring them into fruition.
And I think that this is actually where the interesting thing of you suggesting people, take matters into their own hands last week, and now people are just firebombing Teslas. And I personally find it hilarious. But they're hitting Elon where it hurts. And I mean, some people want to look at it as, yeah, they're hitting it in his wallet, but he's the richest guy on the planet. What's that really going to do? You're hitting him in his ability to go to Mars. And fuck yeah, that's exactly what you need to do. Hit him where it hurts, so that way he hears the message. And that's where I think that, civil disobedience should be done in legal ways, objectively. And past that, though, you have to be looking at the reality of how people are speaking. And at some point, that pressure is going to be felt on him because he's going to have to make a decision okay, if I keep doing this, am I going to still be able to go to Mars?
It's one of those things that we got to be very cautious about. So I was talking earlier.
Yeah, we're not condoning violence. We're not condoning any kind of public vandalism or criminal activity. What I'm saying is that if you are in the position of recognizing that it's happening, you need to take some kind of acknowledgement to the fact that it's happening and that could potentially spread, because not everybody is going to listen to the advice of don't do these things.
The Oklahoma City bombing that was done by Timothy McVeigh. So McVeigh, his motivation for those murders was that the government was oppressing Americans, as evidenced by the attacks on Ruby Ridge in Idaho and the religious community in Waco, Texas. So, do I think that the ATF was wrong and horribly wrong in both of those circumstances? Yes. And nobody has ever been held accountable for what happened at Ruby Ridge, and nobody has ever been held accountable for what happened in Waco, Texas. But do I think that Timothy McVeigh's taking matters into his own hand and murdering hundreds of people, including 27 children, is a reasonable response? No, I don't think that. I think that's. But then we're like, oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. Let's look at the Boston Tea Party. So what is it? I think it was the India Trading Company or something like that. So it was So there, so this was a large international corporation that was making all kinds of cash for the British Crown, and not only did we being the Patriot Revolutionary forces, not only did we attack that commercial vessel and destroy the products that they were trying to take to market, but we knew that we were going to get caught at it, so we deliberately disguised ourselves so that we could blame it on Native American tribes in the region in an effort to cover up our conspiracy in that corporate violence. So if you look at the Boston Tea Party is basically what's happening to Elon Musk right now.
Now, here's the question.
Yeah, and it was effective.
Was the Boston Tea Party effective?
Yeah. So how was it effective? It was effective in that
we're clearly talking about it.
It provided inspiration for the burgeoning revolutionary forces, and it remains to be seen how effective it'll be. But one thing I can tell you, without a doubt, and I think you'll probably echo this, is that half of our country, just about, is reeling. They got their nose bloodied in this last election, and they look at their own political party, the Democratic Party right now, and they're like, these people they're not giving me any help at all. Nothing about that party tells. Yep.
And they're not going to go into the arms of Trump either. And they're in a very desperate place.
Yeah.
And
so
Luigi is a really attractive guy in prison.
Am I worried? Yeah, because I know that I mean, people say a lot about January 6th, but January 6th was a little bit. It was kind of anyway. It was what it was. But if you look at the consistent political violence that was waged by leftist political forces in the U.S. after the George Floyd murder, and
I was actually talking about that yesterday, and it was my last client of the day, and he's a little bit younger, and he didn't know about the Freddie Gray riots in 2015 in Baltimore. And one of the things that I was talking to him about was the difference between the Freddie Gray riots in Baltimore and the George Floyd protests across America. And what I think was really interesting, like, Baltimore was on fire, like absolutely on fire. And I don't think I've seen any protest in any one specific city as drastic as the Freddie Gray riots. That was just completely different. And I think that was the start of a conversation that people kept seeing injustice after injustice after injustice after injustice. So by the time that it came to George Floyd, it's not that it was, this boiling point in a single city. It was this fire that was just all across America. So you didn't necessarily have concentrated Baltimore literally is on fire, but you did see a lot more acts of aggression
I am way
throughout
more
America.
worried
It was
about
much more prevalent.
Civil unrest and violence caused by leftist political forces in the United States than I am about forces of the right. So the forces of the right that act violently are like these little bitty fringe groups, totally like, people that take tiki torches and march down the streets and wear khaki pants and put masks on. Yeah, but the
people that couldn't
vast
pass
majority,
the
I mean, like literally the
fitness
vast
tests.
majority of the populist Republican Party are people that listen to country music. They've got American flags all over their house. I mean, they're easy to say, hey, if I see you burn a flag in front of me, I'm gonna really, I'm gonna kick your ass or whatever. But they're not likely in any way, shape, or form to start mass violence. And Yeah, so the only way that there would be
No,
large
they
scale
take care of them and
violence
theirs.
that involved right-leaning forces in the United States is if there was actually a war. And if there was violence, that's exactly right.
Yeah. If
But
you're coming after
leftist
them and
political
theirs,
forces
then they're
are
coming
like,
after you.
if you do damage to this one little bitty person over here in this tiny little bitty corner, I'm gonna, magnify and amplify that as an offense against the entire nation, and use that to inspire violence. So I think that Musk's foray into politics is for not just for the government. I really don't like what he's doing to the government, but for his companies. There's people are like, I will do whatever I can to get back at that guy, because they identify every program that's being cut, and it's all over it's like, there was just an article in my local paper this morning about 2 federal grants that closed research programs here in our city. And no, the psychedelics.
Was it on the psychedelics? Was it on the psychedelic study? Oh, good.
Yeah, but the university is
This
shutting
still
down the
needs to
DEI
happen.
offices, and do I think that's a good thing? Yeah, because I think that what DEI was is nothing like the equal opportunity that I worked in when I was in the government. It's a very, very different entity, and I think it's harmful to teach any group that they are inherently evil because of their race or gender. And I think that it,
or for things that
and I think
they
that it's equally as
themselves are not
harmful
responsible
to
for
tell
from
people that
past
you are inherently a
generations.
victim, and you can't get ahead in life because you're being oppressed by all these other people over here. I think that message is a bad message, and it's bad for what we were talking about earlier, the social fabric of our country. But I tell you, the letters to the editor in my paper are over the top in terms of we are being attacked by this government. This government is against us. These are they're an attack on one is an attack on all. There was a woman that was arrested I think on Monday in Colorado who came here illegally, had children who are dreamers. So she had she had children while she was here. So she's got children who are citizens because she's been here unlawfully for 30 years. And she had some apparent traffic violation. I don't know what it was. The immigration forces were going to deport her because of that offense. So she went into hiding in a church, and for years she was being protected, hiding in the open. Everybody knew that she was in this church, and but she wouldn't leave the church because she was afraid if she left the church, she'd be deported. Well, no. Now she's been out.
Seems like she was right.
But when she got out, she started a nonprofit that is doing the same thing for migrants who are here unlawfully, trying to, prevent them from being deported, trying to find protection for them if they're being pursued by immigration law enforcement. So they went to her place of employment and arrested her on Monday, and apparently the government's gonna deport her. So there's all kinds of people. Both of the senators, the governor has protested against it. The mayor of Denver has protested against it. So, and everybody is like, she is us. So I think that that the violence that's taken place against Musk's corporate entities is likely to continue and will probably get stronger.
Probably. Yeah. And that's the, I have kind of a related story from one of my clients that came in yesterday. Kid's young, I think he's like 21, 22, and he works as a server at one of the restaurants in town that is really, really well known. Very, very, very popular restaurant. It's that kind of place where if you have out-of-towners come to visit and you want to show them a really good experience, you're going to take them here. So he comes in yesterday morning and he's explaining to me how about a week ago he went to work and the entire back of the staff of the restaurant wasn't there. And he's like, it was weird. I got there and like the entire dish pit was empty. All of the guys that are like bussing in the back, all the dishwashers, they're not there whatsoever. And I was like, did you guys have ICE raid you? And he's like, yeah, we had ICE raid us. And I was like, are most of those workers extra legal? Yeah, they absolutely are. And it scared the ever-loving shit out of them. I was like, so what are you guys doing at work? Because that's when it comes home, like, and then you're actually having it impact people you work with on a daily basis. And he says, well, the process that we have right now is if they come to the location, then a manager is going to greet them in the front and try and get all the information of what it is that they're trying to find and, all the information. And while the manager's greeting them, we have an exit plan for them in the back. And it's to do what we can to protect our family. And when we were talking about it, I was like, that makes sense to me. Like that, if you're trying to protect the people that are legitimately in your life, I get that. And I can understand why people are going to do that. I'm not going to, say that it's right or wrong because it's your family. You're going to do what you're going to do for your family, regardless of whether or not the government thinks that that's the legal decision or not. And, it's going to be a challenge, but it was really weird seeing or hearing him say about it happening here in Boise, because you hear about it in all sorts of different cities across the country, but you don't necessarily think like, oh, just some random restaurant for some dishwashers in the back of a kitchen. Now, do I know any of the context of the individuals and what they had done that maybe ICE was looking for them? No idea. Could it be benign and just the fact that they're looking for work and they didn't go through the legal process? Probably could. Do I want to see that happen? And I would probably be in the exact same position as this kid. But it is a very unfortunate situation to recognize that you're very limited on what options you have. And if one of the options that you want is to show solidarity and say, hey, if it happens to you, it happens to me. And like, I'm standing there with you. And that message can get taken pretty far pretty quickly. And that's one of the issues with why I don't like being on social media so much and why I don't like being online is when people just see those words on a screen or, something on paper, they can put whatever context they want to it and they can really rationalize the extreme value behind that, or they can just read into the innocent connotation that it is. But it definitely can add more fuel to a fire that's already got a spark.
I don't know if it's in Boise or if it's in Nampa, but yeah, it's like
about the hands and all are welcome here.
There are like,
yeah, man, that is a huge thing happening right now.
People
holy crap!
Who are like, I can't believe you made her take a poster down. So like these people are like ready to go to like blows with the government over a poster in a school classroom, and that kind of illustrates my point. Is that I mean, how there's how many people do you think have come to work with something and their boss says, "Hey, you need to take that shirt off," or put on it. Yeah, there's
I've had to tell people that during onboarding. Literally, I'm having this awkward conversation. I say, look, I'm having the conversation that I don't ever want to have, and I really hated having this conversation in a previous life, so just don't ever make me have that awkward conversation with you.
Yeah.
We're good now, right? Cool. Never gonna have this conversation. Awesome. Okay, let's move forward now.
There's, and again, I don't want to minimize, but I mean, there's no other way to do it. I mean, it's a poster, and it's a poster that clearly teaches values, right? And that's why people are coming out in support of it, not because they think that posters are super important, but it's because of the message on that poster represents values that they align with. So the people that are having these protests in support of that teacher are having those protests because they align with the values that she was trying to teach the children in her classroom. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. She's trying to teach these positive values to children in her classroom. But there's a large population in your community that don't think those are positive values, that think that those are negative values, that say, oh, well, if the reason why we have to have a poster with, rainbow people and people with hands of all colors is because the people with white hands are the oppressors and the people with colored hands are the oppressed. And so the oppressed people are welcome here. That's a good way.
So
good way
the
to put
oppressed
it.
people are welcome
But the other half of the people are like, well, wait a minute. If the oppressed people are what their perception is, and I think there's a lot of this going on in Idaho right now. It's backlash. It's like, well, wait a minute. I'm tired of being told, and I'm not saying this is what I'm saying. I'm saying this is the pushback that people are getting. People are tired of being told that they are evil because of who they are, or they are evil because of what they believe. And I think that's exactly the same reason why the pushback is happening with regard to same-sex marriage in Idaho. When you think about it, when the Obergefell decision was announced, there was no outcry from the conservative community, particularly the Christian religious community, the Mormon community, the Catholic community. There was no outcry saying, "Oh, well, we think that this is wrong. You shouldn't have done that. Why? We're going to fight against this in courts."
I'd argue the experience that we had in the 90s
I will agree with you on that. But what I'm saying is, so my view of the Pride movement is that the Pride movement was questionably, but in my opinion, it was the greatest nonviolent political action group in the history of the United States. And the reason I say that is because I don't mean to minimize the civil rights struggles of Black Americans, but there was a lot of violence on both sides during those struggles. Same thing with in women's rights. There was a lot of violence on both sides That's exactly right. All of the
Pride
violence that
movement
I
was
know
a
of, except for
peaceful movement
Stonewall,
that actually
all of
created
the
change.
violence, it came from it was perpetrated
Has come from
against
equity.
gay people, and the Pride movement never, that I know of, in any significant way, responded to that violence with further violence. It was always just, it was, we just want to be, we want to be like everybody else. We want you, we're here, we're not going to go away, we're not going to change. We don't want you to change who you are. We don't want you to change who we are. And I think that came to a pinnacle with what was called the marriage equality movement. And I think that particular, little foray of the Pride movement was so successful. It was just so successful because everybody was like, yeah, I get it. Why are we attacking loving families? Because we think that that's going to somehow affect my family. And
see, and that's where I'm actually, I kind of think that the whole situation with the poster, I think that the right's blowing it out of proportion and saying that it's values that are being taught. I think that it's a very simplified message that's being given to young people to encourage not bullying one another and to just be kind to one another. And like, are there values that are kind of implied in this? There's a possibility of that. But I think that the values that are being implied are implied by parents who have lived long enough to see the nuance in all of those things. But the simplicity of what the poster actually is a simplicity teaching a message to children of
I
like,
agree with you. So I probably should have, hedged my bets on what I was describing is what I think is going on in Idaho.
I agree with you, and I do agree with you. I think that is very much the sentiment that people are having is people are sick of seeing any kind of DEI in any kind of aspect because, like, you don't need to force this down our throat. We can believe what we want to believe. You don't have to necessarily like it. I mean, I think the best way that we've discussed it is you can't legislate me to like a Nazi, so you can't legislate a Nazi to like someone that they're not going to like. And that does make sense. This, to me, seems that I understand where the left is coming from because it seems like there is an attack on values, but it seems that the values that are being attacked are ones that we genuinely would want to have.
Again, I think that the Pride movement did a great job with that, and I think that after Obergefell, and this is just an opinion on mine, I think after the Obergefell decision, the Pride movement gave up the ghost. They're like, we won. We've got marriage equality now. You take our flag and do whatever you want with it. And that Pride flag that has been a rallying force for equality in America was transformed into an equity flag that has been a rallying force for anti-establishment anarchist forces on the left. So like you like yeah, and but you would.
I mean,
you
that
would
sounds
have
punk rock as
never
fuck to me.
seen a riot after Stonewall, and the Pride flag hadn't been invented by then. But we'll just say that Stonewall was an anomaly in that whole movement. But you would never see, this massive riot going in downtown St. Louis and a bunch of people with rainbow flags saying, hey, here we are. We're here. We're queer, and we're proud. We would have never seen that. That Pride flag would never have been associated with that level of violence, with that level of visceral hatred towards the government. But the equity flag, the new flag, where they that's exactly right. And
it very much is associated with it. Yeah, and I can see where that becomes the bigger concern, because it does seem like more of the left is the aggressors in situations as opposed to the right, whereas the agendas that we wind up hearing on the left from more left-leaning media is like, oh, you have all these crazy people on the right that are actually doing things like, yeah, it's fewer and far between, and it's very much less.
And that's where they're right after the Stonewall riots,
one sentiment.
The Gay Liberation Front was organized, and it was like 5 months later. The gay people of New York were like, we don't want anything to do with these violent anarchists that have adopted our name. So they abandoned the Gay Liberation Front and began the Gay Action Alliance, which was had the exact opposite effects. Within 5 months of them beginning that peaceful, nonviolent civil rights organization, they were given a permit for the first Pride flag or first Pride parade in New York City. So that kind of like, oh, wait a minute, you don't get to adopt our identity for your anarchist behavior that happened in 1969 and 1970. And then you take the Obergefell decision that I think was 2012, and it was the exact opposite. It's like, oh, hey, you're anarchists and you want our flag? Here you go. Change it. Do whatever you want. We're done with it. We got what we wanted. And I think that what's happening right now is unfortunate. Because,
go ahead.
Do I agree? Do I think that the legislature in Idaho is being mean-spirited and hateful in drafting a non-binding resolution that suggests that the Supreme Court should overturn Obergefell? Yeah, I think all they're doing is making yeah, and I mean, I have friends.
They're adding more fuel to a fire that's been burning.
Who live in Idaho, are married, have been married for a very long time, have children, and they are afraid that they're going to have to go back to the fear that they lived in before Obergefell because of that non-binding resolution. Now, that's not going to happen because of that resolution. I think that their marriage is on very solid legal ground, and I don't think that I think it would be very difficult at this point to undo that in the U.S. But man, but why are they doing that? Why are they being so mean? They're being so mean because they're like, you took what we gave you, and now you're rubbing our nose in all this. Literally everything that I think, the alphabet cause or whatever, I call it the.
Well, I'll cut you off really quick because if any of the listeners want to hear the story, the fortunate thing is we covered it already in episode 5, so they can go back and listen to the whole story because we don't need to retell the story another time. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're old. You tell the stories sometimes more than once. It's cool. This is the one thing about being a barber that nobody told me would be the case is the reality of being a barber is listening to your coworkers tell the exact same story 100 times to 100 different people. and it just getting better.
I can't tell you how many guys who work
because
security
you
in the
tell
airport will tell me
so many
they're
times.
like, I only know 3 jokes, and I say the same 3 jokes over and over and over all day long, and they keep customers or travelers in their case laughing all day long because, you know, that was three jokes ago was like that guy's already at the boarding gate.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't need much more than that in your repertoire, and you're never going to see these people again.
Nice.
Anywho, I need to get out of here because Mom's going to actually be visiting us tomorrow, so I need to get the house all cleaned up for her. Anything that you want to say for the ending on this week's Supper Talk?
Yes.
I'm sure that we will have many more in episodes to come. All right. Well, then, hey, I appreciate all of you guys who have been listening. Also, I want to give a second quick shout out to my buddy Alan. He listened to last week's episode and was hearing about the conversation that we were having with non-alcoholic beers and the struggles that I have. And he works for a local brewery here in town called Burt's Brewing. And I have always wanted to try their beers, and they don't do anything non-alcoholic. Yeah. And he has explained to me in detail the process of how involved it is to get NAs. But he listened to last week's episode, and he stopped in the shop yesterday.
Is that Rationale?
And he gave me a 4-pack of a company that I had only known that and I had only known that they had one variety in town. And he got me a 4-pack.
That's awesome.
Of a whole bunch of beers that I had no idea existed. I was so excited. So, Alan, thank you. I've been enjoying the hazy IPA over the episode, and I really do appreciate that. It was very kind. And for all of you who have been listening, we really appreciate it. Like the fact that there are enough of you that are listening that I got a first notification from Spotify celebrating the amount of streams that we have. That's really cool, and I appreciate it. So if this is your first episode and you like what you heard, go ahead and give us another follow. We're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, we're on YouTube, and we would love to hear what it is that you have to think about the show. If you have any ideas of what kind of conversations you want to hear me and my dad talk about next week, leave them in the comments below. We will look into anything that you guys have that's worth having a conversation about, and we'll just keep having some weird supper time conversation.
Take care, y'all.
So for my dad and I, thanks again for joining Supper Talk, and we hope you have a great week.